the Gould Mine podcast.
Okay, I'm going to push back a little bit, right? And the only reason is because and this is just a feeling. I was pre-med in undergrad, and I now see a lot of my friends who have, gone through their residency. They're in, they've kind of completed the path. And, in my former life, I was actually a realtor before I got into hotel investing. And I actually helped quite a few physicians buy and sell primary residences. And I would say, I would say that I've had good exposure, not great exposure, but good exposure to the physician community and kind of seeing the financial literacy of physicians. And I actually do not believe, I believe that all physicians have, most physicians, if not all of them, have like above average drive, because you have to in order to make it through medical school, right? There's no way that you can make it without having a shitload of determination. However, I do feel like a lot of them get stuck in the hamster wheel of the day-to-day of being a doctor, that they don't even have time to think about, for example, I've had clients, who were super respected physicians, and didn't even really have a retirement plan, right? They had no idea what they were doing. And so that's why I really wanted to have this conversation with you, because I do feel like there is a missing link somewhere in the chain where a lot of physicians have the financial capability of, doing things in the real estate world, but not necessarily the financial literacy to execute on it.
Oh, so you actually bring up interesting and very important points. So what you're describing is, hey, you know what? You know a lot of doctors. And because of what you did as a real estate agent, you actually got a picture into their financial life. And you got to see things where you think are relatively foolish. Why don't you have a retirement account? Why don't you have a nest egg? Whatever it may be. And then one of the key components you said is doctors get caught up on a hamster wheel. It's that hamster wheel, which you alluded to, which makes it difficult for doctors to think outside of anything behind medicine. So yes, I talked about that we all have drives. Yes, we always seek excellence. So you're saying, well, why aren't I stuck on that hamster wheel? Because quite literally, we are. So, well, let's back up. So when does a doctor actually get to that point of going along the path of becoming a doctor? You yourself said that you were pre-med. And it quite literally happens that day you get that acceptance letter to med school, where you actually show up to med school on day one. It's a very memorable day, at least back in my day, on day one. You would go into a room, and this was before the days. I mean, I'm older. I graduated last century. I graduated 99th med school. So we didn't have phones. We didn't have stuff. So they literally took roll, and they say, if we call your name and you don't say here, we're going to give your spot to someone else.
Oh my!
So day one, everyone was there. And literally that would happen. I remember med students who, they got a call that day and they had to drop what they were doing and, drive to campus. But anyway, so from that moment on, we are taught on how to become a doctor. Okay, how do you do it? You got to study, you got to take your exams, you got to take your board exams, then you got to graduate med school, then residency, blah, blah, blah. And then for me, that was 12 years later, something like that, 13 years later, I was an attending doctor. I was a physician, or I was a working physician. I was a physician in the 90s. And then you get your first paycheck. So that's what you're alluding to.
Yeah.
So what happened during those 13 years what do you do with that first paycheck? And you're right. A lot of doctors don't know. We are so busy in terms of becoming a doctor, and our identity is so much of just being a doctor, of having our degree next to our name, that sometimes we can forget what's going on outside of the world, right? So let's talk about just normal cognitive societal changes that happen to an individual. Well, one, for a lot of people, marriage. Two, for a lot of people, having kids, and that's forced upon you, right? Or I should say the responsibilities that come along with having kids and having a spouse is relatively forced upon you. And you can learn. What isn't, and what you're alluding to is, well, how about finances? How are you going to retire? We're making a lot of money. You only got 20, 30 years left to live.